Java, JCP, Adopt-a-JSR, and U, a winning combination. So today, I'm Heather VanCura, Chair and Director of the JCP program. I've been involved with Java ever since the Java release 1.2, so I've been working on Java since 2000. I came over to Oracle through the Sun Microsystems acquisition, and in addition to being involved with the JCP, leader of the global adoption programs around Java. Been a longtime fan of open source and helped oversee the transition that we did with Java at Sun Microsystems. I'm originally from California, so I of course enjoy the sunny climate here in Spain. My first time to Spain though, thank you for having me. Enjoying all of the food and cultural sites and the people, of course. So I enjoy having fun, and travel is one of those fun things that I get to do as part of my job, traveling the world and meeting with Java developers like you. So today, as I start my talk, I told you I'd talk to you a little bit about Java first, just a brief, my take on Java in terms of how it relates to the community and what's your role in it. So most probably heard of the TIOB index. I like to show this chart here showing the last 5 years in terms of the popularity of Java. Java continues to be number one. After 22 years, we're just celebrating the 22nd birthday of Java recently. And why is it, in terms of the technology, why is it that it still continues to be so popular despite the predictions many people have that Java's dead or will be dying soon? It continues to show up as number one on the TIOB index. And I think there's several reasons for this. Clearly, you know that Java runs not just on the original devices that it was intended for when it was introduced back at Sun Microsystems in the Sun Labs in 1995, talking about targeting set-top boxes. Now it's running on virtually everything that you touch around the world, in cars, in financial systems, travel systems, anything that you touch is running Java. And there's probably, I think, 3 reasons that I came down to when I looked at it in terms of thinking of the celebration of the anniversary, what makes Java so special. Well, first of all, it has security built into it and the scalability from end to end. It's really the only technology that runs on the very small devices, starting with Java cards, all the way up to the very high-end server systems. Secondly, compatibility. So the promise of backwards compatibility is essential to the success of Java, is what made it a stable and secure platform for so many years. But third, and most importantly, and this is really the premise of my talk, the fact that Java is developed in a unique way that really no other technology is developed. It is developed collaboratively with the community, and we use the JCP, the Java Community Process Program, to evolve Java, and that's how it is collaboratively developed. So that is why I believe we continue to see the growth of Java, why it's the #1 development platform now growing into the cloud, with not just hundreds of developers, but millions of Java developers all over the world, and running on billions of devices, all different kinds of devices all around the world. And that is, of course, based on some of the philosophies that we use to evolve Java in terms of the completeness of the platform, the quality, the security, the transparent evolution through the JCP, and the active ecosystem involvement, so you, the Java developers. So the first part of my talk, I'm going to spend just about 10 minutes telling you what is the JCP and how does it work functionally. And then I'll get into a little bit more about how you can participate and what the current technologies being developed through the JCP program are. So, collaborative development, how does it work? The heavy lifting and the main focus of the JCP really is the JSR development, so Java Specification Requests. Since this is a Java Developer Conference, clearly you've heard the term JSR, but you may or may not be aware that all JSRs are developed through the JCP program. And essentially the way it works is that everything in the Java X namespace does have a JSR associated with it and goes through the same process every time. Every technology goes through the JSR process. So it's a Java specification request. Members of the JCP are the people who participate in developing JSRs. Every JSR has a spec lead, every JSR has an expert group. So the spec lead is responsible for leading that expert group and doing the day-to-day work. And all of those people are made up of members of the community, so members of the JCP. And each expert group has a responsibility to deliver not just the code, but also a specification and a technology compatibility kit. So we have 3 different deliverables that work together to ensure the success of Java. And these 3 things work together in what I like to demonstrate as a triangle, and this has remained consistent throughout the life cycle of the JCP, that we've had these 3 requirements. And these 3 things work together really well and demonstrate, first of all, a specification is really important to developers and to the success of Java. It's probably the best technology documentation that any technology has. But the reference implementation is showing you that you can create an implementation of the specification. And the JCP is unique because we enable a whole ecosystem of choice for developers, and that not only do you have just one implementation of every JSR, you have multiple compatible implementations, and that's where the TCK comes in. So the test suite ensuring compatibility. Not only must the reference implementation pass the test suite to be final and declared a standard in terms of the JSR being final and enabled to use in production, not just in development, but you're enabling the whole community to take the test suite and run their own implementations against it, so you can have multiple compatible implementations. And I'll show you a few examples of what that looks like in practice. But really, these 3 things working together is what enables that whole ecosystem of choice that we have for developers, but also for customers and vendors who want to create those compatible implementations. So every JSR is also voted on by the executive committee. So the JCP works like a standards body. We have the membership as well as an executive committee that acts as a board of directors and oversight of the organization overall. And one of their main jobs is to vote on every JSR 3 times throughout its life cycle. So every JSR has 3 open review periods, which is open to anyone in the Java development community, whether you're a JCP member or not. And it is voted on by the executive committee 3 times throughout its life cycle. And it must pass all 3 votes, or it cannot go final and it cannot continue to be released into the community. So this is the structure of our organization and what it looks like. I'm the chair of the JCP, and I'm responsible for chairing the executive committee. Essentially, we meet monthly, and we have, in addition to voting on all of the JSRs, we also are responsible for the entire evolution of the JCP itself. So we evolve ourselves to meet the needs of developers, and as things change around us, we need to adapt to be able to meet the needs that the community has. So I have a small team that works for me to administer the JCP, but the main work of the JCP is done through the spec leads. That's the JSR expert groups. So there's a leader, and then there's members of the community helping them complete the work. And the most important thing, though, that we really need to have is we need to have the Java developer community actually taking a look at reviewing this work before it's gone out into the community and gone to final release. So that's a really important part of this talk, and it's an important part of the JCP and the continued success of Java is that we do continue to bring in that real-world developer feedback by getting people like yourselves to see what's happening in the JCP, provide your comments, provide your use cases, test it out, and let us know how it's working for you. All different kinds of people can be members, so not just corporations. When the JCP first started out, the software world was a little bit different, and we had mostly corporations who were joining the JCP and participating on the expert groups. But we've grown and evolved to now that the majority of our members are actually individual Java developers. So people who are interested in joining the JCP, whether or not it's associated with their job at their employer, so they're not necessarily tasked with participating on an expert group as part of their job, but it's something that they enjoy doing personally. We've also expanded to include Java user groups and open source groups. People like Eclipse and the Apache Software Foundation participate through the JCP, and our members are worldwide, all over the world. So as we've introduced Java user groups, we've seen a big infusion of energy and a dynamic community coming into the JCP. We've had Java user groups from all around the world join the JCP and want to get more involved in this process in using the technology that they develop with every day. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit later about how you can get involved through your Java user group and start to influence the future of Java in that way. Our executive committee, in a similar way that we've expanded to have more than companies in our general membership, it's the same thing in the executive committee. So the responsibility of the executive committee is to get together and meet and look at the direction of the organization overall. And in that way, it's important that we also represent the Java community at large, not just by having companies and vendors participating, but all different types of groups. So companies and vendors, companies not just that are vendors of Java, but people who are using Java to develop their products. So companies like Twitter, Goldman Sachs, Credit Suisse. Java user groups. We have 2 Java user groups serving on the executive committee currently, both from London and Brazil. And we have a couple of individual Java developers, and they would be representing the individual Java developer who is as I mentioned earlier, that's the majority of our membership at this time. Over 3/4 of our membership are now individual Java developers. So just to put some faces to that group, that's the executive committee. This is the last time that we met in Austin, Texas, last month in May. Our next meeting is going to be the week before Java 1 in San Francisco. So we rotate around the world, meeting face-to-face 3 times a year, and then monthly on the phone, the months that we don't meet face-to-face. So how do we do this? The JSR development life cycle. To earlier on, we now have Java available via open source license. But when we made that transition over 10 years ago, we maintain and we still do that open source is important, and that's the de facto model of development now for software developers, but we still need open standards as well. We need both of these things, and so we continue to maintain that it's important to have open source as a requirement, but standards are important, and in that way, it enables that choice that I talked to you about earlier. So people can come together and work on a JSR, agreeing on what we're going to standardize, and then deciding after the fact, after we've gotten that commonality in terms of what we're going to standardize, we'll compete on the implementations. And implementations in open source, that's easier for developers to understand. And as I mentioned, it results in more implementation, and that gives you greater choice, but also greater adoption of Java technology overall. So we continue to see Java be #1. And as things have changed in the software development world, it used to be that people would decide on what to before they had any experience with that technology. But these days we start to see more experience happening in open source projects where people don't decide first off, we just need to standardize this particular type of technology, but get experience with it first. So things like configuration, people have said, oh, we should have a JSR for configuration. But really there's not enough commonality and experience in that area yet. And so what we've encouraged those folks to do are interested in doing that experiment in open source and then come together and standardize on it later through the JCP. So to give a little bit of concreteness to what I mean when I say choice in implementations and JSRs are developed in open source, the reference implementations for the 2 Java platforms that are currently being developed, Java SE and Java EE, are both developed collaboratively and released under open source licenses, but also developed as open source projects. So this essentially is the reference implementation piece for the 2 platforms. So they have a specification, they have the reference implementation, they have the TCK. So for Java SE, the reference implementation is developed through OpenJDK. And for the Java EE platform, the reference implementation is developed through Project Glassfish. So that just kind of ties those pieces together for you. It's the end of my JCP primer. What is the JCP? And I'll start going into the 3 things that I told you I'll tell you about. So what's being developed now in the JCP? What are the things that are active, and what are the major releases that are coming out later this summer? How have we adapted the JCP organization itself overall? What are some of the reforms that we've made through the JCP.next effort? And then thirdly, how are we getting more increased participation from the community? And this is where Java user groups and individual Java developers really come into play in terms of getting that increased participation from the community and having that vibrant ecosystem that I talked about that's so essential to Java. So first of all, the technology piece. Java ME, the first platform, was updated in 2014. So Java ME has actually had a not so current update, but still a release that there are some embedded vendors still interested in developing Java as a solution. As I talked about earlier, Java is unique in that it scales from the very small devices up to the very large ones. So we still do have the Java ME platform really focused on embedded devices and the Internet of Things connected to the cloud. Java EE, so the last release of Java EE that's final and being used in production is Java EE7. That was released in May 2013. This graphic is really helpful because it shows you all of the different technologies that fall under Java EE, the platform. And some people don't realize that each one of these technologies is actually a JSR that is developed through the JCP and goes under the umbrella platform EE7 in this case, and was released in 2013. So adoption for Java EE was actually quite slow, so that was 4 years ago now. But we've seen over the last year particularly really the vibrant community come together and release all of these compatible implementations. So this is what I told you I would tell you about a little earlier, kind of demonstrating the choice that the compatible implementations generate. So the fact that we have the specification and not just one reference implementation to choose from. Project Glassfish, you see the fish up there as one of the Java EE compatible application servers, but all of the other application servers that have actually developed their own implementation. So that's what grows the community at large and gives you those choices as not only as developers, but also customers have those choices. And it creates more choices and more options and greater opportunities for you as Java developers. And currently we're working on Java EE, so another platform release coming out this summer, Java EE, scheduled to be released later this summer. And really the focus of Java EE is to look at how to move to the cloud and a little bit of focus on microservices. So backwards compatibility continues to be important. As I mentioned earlier, that's one of the key tenets of the success of Java. So that will continue to be a focus with the JSRs that are currently being developed for release as part of Java EE8. So most of these JSRs are near very final stages, so few have even gone final into final release already, and many are in public review or proposed final draft stage, which is towards the end of the life cycle, since all of these are scheduled to be released this summer. So Java EE8 won't go final until all of the JSRs are approved by the executive committee and have posted their final releases. And then over time, you'll start to see more of those compatible implementations. So as you can see from my earlier slide, it takes a few years for the community to catch up and for you to start seeing those options available in production. But one of the things that you can start to think about as developers is these are the new technologies that are being developed, and you can start to get ready for them and start to learn about them, so when they are out there in production, you're ready for them and can be ahead of the curve and a leader in your space, whether you're an employer or if you have your own consultancy as an independent. So these are the JSRs currently under development. A couple of new ones. So JSON-B is a new technology, JSON bindings, new for Java EE, wasn't part of the platform with the Java EE7 release. We had done JSON processing, but not JSON bindings. And security. So obviously security really essential to Java, and it's been built into it from the beginning of Java, but what's different is that security is being called out as a separate JSR as part of Java EE8, and we're taking a look at the approach to that. So that has its own JSR, security, and then updates to a lot of the existing technologies. Some are maintenance releases, which means it's a minor release, and some are actually new JSRs. So things like bean validation, CDI, JSRS, JSF, servlet, and JSON processing. Those are new JSRs. And thirdly, the third Java platform, Java SE. So Java SE8 is the current release that went final through the JCP back in 2014. Lots of really cool features went into Java 8, so it created quite a bit of excitement in the community in terms of lambdas, streams API, a new date and time API, introducing annotations. So some really cool features, which is one of the things that drove the adoption of Java 8 being so successful. It definitely was the most successful and quickly adopted release of Java that I've worked on, and as I mentioned, I've worked on quite a few over the last 15 plus years. But another reason why I think the adoption was so fast, it was not just the features, but the fact that the community got involved with the Java 8 release early on and started testing out the builds before it went final and reporting issues. So this whole idea of bringing the community more close to the development of the standardization has really affected the adoption and the use of Java overall. So we hope to continue that again with Java 9. So this also, Java 9 is currently scheduled to release later this summer as well. In September is the current date. So 2 Java platform releases in one summer. That's actually a unique thing. They're usually spread out by about a year, but this year 2 in the same year. Another big step forward for Java. So 122 different projects going into Java 9, but of course you probably already are aware that the big part of Java 9 is Project Jigsaw and introducing modularity to Java. So we have early access builds available. You can start to look at them now, even though the release won't be final until September. But there's a link where you can download the latest release. And it's important to note that there's more to Java 9 than modularity. There are a couple other cool features in terms of things that you might want to take a look at and get ready for. JShell and the Java linker being 2 of the most popular ones that people are interested in terms of Java. And still, the important thing as well to note is that even if you aren't super excited about Java 9 and can't wait to use modularity, it kind of sets the stage for some of the other cool things that are to come in the future of Java. And this just gives you a few ideas of what might be coming next after Java 9, because of course we've already started working on more things, even though the final release of Java 9 isn't even out yet. But you can look at all of this in OpenJDK. So as I mentioned earlier, the reference implementation is done in open source through OpenJDK. So those are the technologies being developed currently through the JCP. And the next part of my role in the organization is to look at how the JCP works overall. So kind of the constitution and governance of the JCP as an organization. So that's a really important part of the job, not as interesting to developers. So I give you just a few highlights of what we've been doing. So first of all, when the JCP first started, really closed operation was the mode of the JSR expert groups. So it was really done in private by the spec lead and the expert groups. And that, of course, doesn't work for open source software development. That's not the expectations of the community. And so the first thing that we took to address as part of an effort we called JCP.next, so how are we evolving JCP to the next version, was eliminating that smoke-filled rooms type of metaphor. So making things more transparent to the developer community when you aren't a member of the JCP or you aren't a spec lead, you aren't an expert group. All of that work should be available and accessible to the community at large. So what we did with this first effort was we mandated transparency. So that means that every JSR is now developed in the open. That means that every JSR has a public issue tracker. Every JSR has an open public discussion forum and downloads that are accessible to anyone who wants to take a look at the work as it progresses. Secondly, we decided to merge our oversight committee. So we used to have 2 boards, so 2 executive committees for different platforms. So not only was Java really kind of converging and it wasn't making less and less sense to have 2 separate executive committees, it really creates a little bit more of a heavyweight organization. So we wanted to streamline that and make ourselves a little bit more agile. And we merged those executive committees into one. So we now have 1 executive committee for Java. And the third thing that we did was we took a look at broadening our membership, as I mentioned, beyond corporations, right? So making it easier for people to join and participate in the JCP. And we looked at that in terms of how can we eliminate any barriers. So we surveyed the membership and came up with some barriers, and also people who had looked at being interested in joining the JCP but hadn't joined the JCP yet. And as a result, we decided to introduce new membership levels. So it used to be more of a one-size-fits-all. If you want to participate in the JCP, there's one membership, agreement to sign, and everyone participates in the same way. So just last year, we introduced new membership levels. So we evolved the JCP and rolled out new membership levels. We eliminated the fees. We introduced electronic signatures, so that's kind of standard at this point. And we added contributors for JSR expert groups. So instead of just expert group members now, we can have community members who can act as contributors on a JSR. So that gives that recognition to people who are taking time out and giving us minor comments or contributions that aren't necessarily serving on an expert group and putting in that larger time commitment. And those people also have seats on the executive committee. So we make sure that we're representing our entire community membership base. So this is the membership structure now, what it looks like. We used to have, as I mentioned, just one type of membership, but we really did want to reach all of the different types of members, Java user groups, open source groups, individuals, as well as still retaining the companies. So we have associate members now, and these are individuals that can be listed as contributors on JSRs, and they can vote in the executive committee for those associate seats. We also now have partner members, so a special membership for Java user groups. And so for the associate members and the partner members, that's a lighter weight membership agreement, a couple of pages versus 12, which was the current, which was the full membership agreement to join the JCP. And also the thing that's significant with the associate members is we used to ask individuals to have their employer sign. Now you can join as an associate member of the JCP, and you don't need to get your employer's permission or have them sign the associate membership agreement. So again, that was a barrier that we eliminated. And then we can, of course, continue to have the full membership. So full members can be an expert group member, lead a JSR as a spec lead, and serve on the executive committee and vote for the other seats of the executive committee members in our annual elections that we have every fall to elect the members of our executive committee. And as I mentioned, that was final last year, but we've already started working in 2017. We've created within the executive committee 3 working groups. So the first one is the OpenJDK working group. So we're looking at moving to a faster release cycle for Java. So for Java SE, looking at having releases every year versus, as you saw in my timeline, every few years. So looking at increasing the efficiencies between the JCP and OpenJDK and making sure we coordinate well together. So that's the first working group. Second working group is looking at how we can continue to carry on Java ME. So on the executive committee, we do have a few embedded companies who are interested in carrying on the evolution in this space. So people like Microdoc and Gemalto, ARM, V2Com, those types of companies that want to continue to see Java ME move forward. And then thirdly, the JCP.next working group. So even though we just introduced new changes in terms of membership levels, there are always new things that we can look at. So we're looking at enabling even more open, transparent RI development to continue evolving the JCP. And we, of course, within the executive committee, make all of our materials and summaries public. So if you're interested in finding out more about those discussions, you can follow the link in the slides, and that's also available off of jcp.org on the homepage in the top right corner, the EC meeting summaries. So the result of that work in terms of working on the overall corporate governance of the JCP is that the JCP is more open than it was before, and we've continued to evolve to meet the needs of developers, and we continue to do so and are open to more comments and feedback on how we can do that. So I get to my third part of my talk now, which is the final part of the talk. Now that we've made everything open, why is it that you, as a developer, would want to participate? And I've shared with you a little bit about how the JCP works, what are some of the technologies that we're working on, how are we evolving the structure of the organization overall. But now that everything is open and you know what technologies are out there that you can learn more about, why is it that you would want to invest some of your time? So again, I took to the membership to find out what are some of the things that our current JCP members have gotten out of their participation. And I came up with these 5 things. I had 5 things to start, but really the 6th thing came down to kind of, I guess, the essence of it. So all of these things that you're going to gain by participating in the efforts of the JCP, you're going to have fun while doing them. So you're going to be gaining knowledge, technical knowledge, and skills, but at the same time, I call out skills as a second thing because some of the skills that you develop through working in the JCP and open source projects overall are more of those soft skills, so things like communication and collaboration and teamwork that are becoming more and more crucial to Java developers, where they're spending more and more time doing these kinds of tasks. It's not anymore that you can go off and just have the best technical skills. You also need to be able to communicate and work well with other developers, both close to you as well as in other organizations and other locations around the world. Increasing visibility, and again, that's not just locally, but in the global ecosystem as well. And to that end, you're doing that and you're advancing your career. So getting more visibility, being seen as a thought leader, and at the same time, having fun while doing it, growing your network and meeting Java developers all around the world. So you can do this as an individual, that's fine. And as I mentioned, most of our membership in the JCP now is made up of individuals working on these types of efforts on their own. But what we found is if you work as part of a team, you can achieve more. You can work together through your Java user group if you're participating in a Java user group, or also just through small groups at your employer or people that you know locally in your community. You can help each other, you can teach each other, and you can work with each other to create greater things. And even at Java 1, we've shown over the last few years, we do community art projects, kind of demonstrating that working together you can achieve more. This is the community art project that we did at Java 1, where all of the attendees at Java 1 contributed pictures and an artist assembled them together to create a matrix art project showing the Golden Gate Bridge, which is an iconic image of San Francisco where we were holding the conference. So Adopt-a-JSR is the name of this effort that's been created, and it really is a grassroots effort led by Java user groups, starting with the London Java community and SoJava in Brazil. So a way for Java user groups to get involved and participate, and under this umbrella, Adopt-a-JSR. So how do you get started on that? This effort started about 5 years ago, so it's been around for a little while. And initially, we thought people would pick up on it right away, but we found again there are a few barriers. Right? So we need to give people some guidance in terms of how do you do this. And this works not only for Adopt-a-JSR, but also if you decide on your own that you want to go ahead and start participating in some of the JCP or JSR activities. So it's kind of a step-by-step, 6 steps that you can take to get involved and contribute and make a difference in the future of Java. So the first thing you need to do is you pick a technology, right? So we do have close to 400 JSRs that have been developed through the JCP in its life. So clearly you need to pick one. And as you probably could have guessed from my slides where I told you what we're working on currently, that number of JSRs is between 15 and 20 at any given time, an active JSR. So that'd be a JSR that's currently in development or has gone final in the last year. Because even if a JSR has gone final, and since we do have 2 major releases coming up this summer, many of the JSRs under development are very near final release. But that doesn't mean that there isn't more work that can be done. As I showed, there is a little bit of a delay in terms of when something's final as a standard and as a JSR, and where you're going to see it used in production and in products. So there's that time in between when you can be trying it out, learning about it, evangelizing about it, and even reporting bugs. Even when it goes final, you'll still find things that might need to be fixed, which can be done through maintenance release process. So recently submitted JSRs, as you can see, most of these are Java EE related on the server side. So the JSRs are listed here with their numbers. That's a really critical thing about the JCP if you're not familiar with it or haven't been around it for a while. Every JSR has a number, and people often, once they get involved with it, refer to it by number versus the title, which can sometimes be lengthy. So most of these are, and even these have abbreviations. We have a thing about abbreviations in the JCP. But some also for the Java SE platform. And a few are standalone, so it's not necessary for a JSR to be part of a platform release. Over time, I have seen that most JSRs now do want to be targeted for a platform release and included in a platform, but it's not necessary. So for example, there's desktop application API. It's standalone. It's not targeted to be part of a platform update. It's led actually by Andres Almaray, who's here at the conference this year. So you can talk to him about that. So pick the JSR, that's the first step. And once you pick the JSR, go and find out some information about it. One of the things that you can do once you have the number, and this is again why I say having the number is great, enter it into the website on the top left, enter the number, and then you'll find a page. Every JSR not only goes through the same process of development, but it also has the same information that it has to fill out in terms of it has a page that looks exactly like this. So at the top you have the title, Then you have all of the drafts as it goes through the JCP. You have links to the public discussion forum and the public issue tracker. That's so important for you to take a look at, to familiarize yourself with. And then who's the expert group, who's the spec lead, what's their contact information, what's the schedule, and what is the need for this technology, what are we planning to do with it. That's what you'll find here on the JSR page. So it's important to go there to familiarize yourself with it. And then right off the bat, communication essential. So a two-way communication. So don't just come and consume that information and read about it, but actually engage with the expert group and with the lead and let them know that you're interested. You're interested in getting involved with this technology. And try to come together in an agreement in terms of what can you work on. So this again is a really big hurdle for people deciding what to do for an action, right? You know what you want to, you know which technology you're interested in. You've said you want to do something with it, but then the inertia sometimes comes in taking the action. So again, you can do this as part of your user group as a team, and I encourage that, but you can do it on your own as well. And these are just some suggestions. Don't be limited by these suggestions, but what I've found to be the most successful in the past with developers are some of these things. So sharing their ideas and your feedback, and you can do that on the public discussion list or in the issue tracker. So again, that's important to take a look and read that information so you familiarize yourself with it so you can comment on some of the things that are being addressed. Read early versions of the specifications and the Java docs, as well as download the early access reference implementation. So that's a really key thing to do, and also a little bit more interesting to developers to actually download the reference implementation. You can create sample applications if you want to, so that's a cool thing to do together as a team, kind of a hands-on through like a hack day. You can also evangelize about the technology. That counts as well. So writing about it or talking about it in your local community or at your employer through a lunchtime talk, educating people on what you've learned and getting them ready for what's coming. Translations is also something that some of the user groups have done in terms of translating materials into your local language. Also talking about it on social media. So Java developers I've found in terms of the different social media outlets enjoy Twitter, so you can tweet about the technology, you've read about it, what you think's cool about it, what you're looking forward to. Blogging articles are also good, as well as short mini talks or even a longer talk. So what I've seen lately is that we see more and more, it doesn't have to be the spec lead that's giving a talk about a new JSR. It can be anyone who's become familiar with the technology and wants to share their knowledge. So doing it at local events like this, we could see more JSR related talks at local conferences. And helping with documentation is of course always a desired thing. So following the public discussions and commenting, number 4, every JSR not only has that jcp.org page, but it also has an issue tracker. So when you're doing that, tag how you're participating. So I'm participating as part of a local user group, I'm from this community, and again, here when you're contributing on the public list and the issue tracker, it can be a substantial and given more weight if you're doing this with your local community. So you're not just sharing one person's experience, but you're sharing the local community, and that can carry a little bit more weight with the user group. 5th thing is share your resources. So you can both consume and share resources. So we've created an Adopt-a-JSR organization on GitHub, and here you'll find some sample applications that some user groups have created. So that means that you could have a hack day without having to create your own sample application. You can, of course, just download and test out the early access reference implementation if you want, but if you wanted to do something a little bit more advanced, you could start with a sample application that another user group has created. There's also some hack sessions and tutorials available on the Adopt-a-JSR site, as well as some benchmarks. So I encourage you to take a look at the resources that are available there. Use these and contribute to them and donate them back to the organization. It's continued to grow over the last 3 years. And the 6th step and the final thing is actually participate in some of these activities and have fun. And I show this image in particular because it shows a hack day that we had, which was only with 5 people. And it was really one of the most successful hack days that we had. This is an example with CDI, and it was done at Devox UK, so at a conference. So you don't have to wait and do a hack day at a conference. You can do it as a standalone event, either in an evening event or lunchtime event or on the weekend. And it doesn't have to be hundreds of developers. I often have talked to people, and the impression is that you need to have a large group in order to have an effective hack day, and that's not the case. They can be very small, 3 to 5 developers having fun together. And we actually have started to create virtual hack days, so we have some coming up. We have one set for the 19th of August, and I'm going to I show a link for that later through the virtual jug. So what is Adopt-a-JSR? As I mentioned, it's this jug-led initiative, global groups of Java user groups working together, making their community better, making Java better, attracting more developers to their employer, to their community. So what I'd like to do now is spend just 5 minutes sharing with you what some groups around the world have done to give you a little bit of inspiration, as well as that real-world example of what people are doing in the community. So starting out the Java 9 Hack Days that I mentioned just a minute ago, all Java user groups and developers can participate, and these are recorded and posted on YouTube. The virtual jug, we had 2 events so far doing Java 9 Hack Days. So Java SE 9, getting ready for Java 9. We did our first one in November 2016 in Iceland with the Iceland Jug, and we just completed one in April in London with the London Java community, so that's available on YouTube. And we are planning a second one in Atlanta on East Coast time, so August 19th. We'll be having a second Java 9 Hack Day, and then a more advanced Java 9 Hack Day where you should have actually watched or participated live in one of these past Java 9 events. So it's a 6-hour event. Break it up into 3 different segments, getting ready for modularity, and then also we have a session on how to use JShell. So that's one example of the virtual jug. So you can be anywhere to participate in that one. The Bucharest jug is another jug that's become active and gotten involved, both on Java EE as well as planning to participate in the virtual jug hack day in August. So they got involved with JSON processing. They became interested actually in the first stage with the JSON P 1.0 with part of Java EE 7, but they didn't actually create a hack day until this latest JSR, which is now final JSON processing. But they created a hack day, and they created a demo, which is available in the Adopt-a-JSR organization. So again, an example of something you could do locally if you wanted to either do it on your own or with a small group. Download the demo from the JSON processing hack day that they did, and you have content built in there ready to go. Bulgarian Jug also became interested in Java EE a few years ago, but had a little bit of a struggle in terms of finding something that they wanted to do and they could agree on that would be productive and useful for the community. So they decided on CDI. So CDI 2.0 is now gone to final, but they had a hack day with the spec lead from Red Hat for CDI 2.0, and that is recorded and available on YouTube. The link is there. The Netherlands Jug got involved with the security API. That's one of the new ones that I mentioned earlier on. They put some great examples together. That's available in the link on GitHub, and they're planning to do a collaboration with the Chicago Jug doing a Java 9 hack day in August, later this summer. Similar thing for Paris, Java 9 hack days. So they've had some great success with that. They have a large developer community in Paris. And in Belgium, focusing on Java EE, they actually created a sample application as part of Java EE 7 for a new functionality with that release that went into Java EE, which is a Java API for WebSockets. So being that it's a new functionality going into the Java EE platform, there weren't any sample applications, so that's always needed, sample application to include with the SDK. So that was actually contributed through the Adopt-a-JSR effort. And of course, the initiator of Adopt-a-JSR, London Java community, really focused on performance and the JVM. So lots of Java 9 hack days, more planned in August and September. And in Brazil, again, very active, vibrant community, working primarily on the Java EE JSRs, but also looking at getting involved with the Java SE hack days that we're organizing, and doing lots of translation work, so talks as well as translating written materials into Portuguese to, again, increase that adoption. So there's lots of different things that you can do to participate in the effort, to learn about what's coming, as well as increase adoption in your local community. And in India, with the Chennai Jug, also involved the Java EE7 platform release, working to create a sample application, which also is available on the Adopt-a-JSR GitHub organization. So in addition to the Adopt-a-JSR GitHub organization, we now have Java EE development happening on GitHub. So Glassfish itself is developed now on GitHub. You can find it, as well as all of the projects being developed as JSRs for Java EE at the Java EE GitHub organization. So that's all resourced there, as well as new mailing lists on groups.io. In addition, if you want to do the adoption for Java 9, so the OpenJDK project also has an adoption group. So this is growing out of the Adopt-a-JSR effort. It became an actual group as part of OpenJDK. We now have an adoption group as part of OpenJDK. So being fed by the community, this group exists, and the links are there for you to find out more about how to participate in that and try out the latest builds of Java 9 and get your applications ready for Java 9. We need you to participate. I encourage you all to take a look at some of the links that I've talked about earlier. Find out how you can join, become a member of the JCP, start to get involved in the effort. Follow us on Twitter, interact with us through the GitHub organization's mailing lists and public discussion forums. Thank you for your time here today. This closes day 1 of the conference, and I hope that you'll have a few minutes to join us at the party later. You can find me on Twitter for questions. I could probably take one question here, but I'll also be hanging out after to take questions. On Twitter, I'm Heather VC, and I also do the JCP Twitter handle, which is JCP_org. All right.